sell Anheuser-Busch or Miller Coors products. They don't have a nationwide network. They're not associated with any red, blue, or gold colors that you might hear about. They do, however, have platforms that enable small brands to gain access to the market and a desire to actively disrupt a three-tier distribution system that hasn't changed very much in 80 years. So with that, I'll call up our next guest. Cheryl Durzy is the founder of Liberation Distribution, a Silicon Valley-based alcohol distributor and technology company that offers a three-tier compliant web-based platform and connects retailers directly to small batch producers. Chris Young is the founder of the Beer Connect, a technology company that helps brewers exercise their self-distribution rights while connecting brands to retailers through a platform Chris recently described to me as the Etsy of beer. And Rob Burns is the co-founder of Night Shift Brewing and Distributing, a full-scale commercial brewery with a wholesale division aimed at challenging what he calls an anti-competitive and archaic system. So I'd like to start by having each of you guys kind of explain your companies and talk about what you're all about. I tried to kind of distill it down as much as I could, but specifically for Cheryl and Chris, you guys have some interesting ways of going about the distribution business, and it's pretty complex. And I know that people who are very familiar with how distribution works currently can struggle to wrap their heads around kind of what you guys are doing and what your goals are. So talk about your concepts a little bit and explain how it works. I'll start with Cheryl.
Sure. So thank you for having me. My company is Liberation Distribution, libdib.com, so libdib for short. I'm all of 11 weeks old in terms of my launch, so I'm starting to get to be an old timer here in the startup industry. I come from the wine world. My family owns a winery in the northern Central Coast, and I have been managing, or I was up until a year ago, managing the wholesale side of the business. I have worked with probably over 200 distributors around the country over the past 20 years, and especially over the last 10 years have really noticed the small to mid-sized business struggle that we all have had, whether it's not even having access to a market because every distributor is not taking on new brands, whether it's being dropped without even knowing, which has happened to me multiple times. That's always fun. Whether it's not being able to have the clout or the money to get their attention to sell your products even if they have it. So about a year ago, I got very frustrated over probably too many glasses of Pinot Noir, and complained to my dad, who was my boss at the time, because we're a family-owned business, and said, there has to be a better way of doing this. Other industries have figured it out. There has to be a better way of doing this. So came up with the concept for LibDib. I'm in the middle of Silicon Valley, so said we need to have a technology play on this. How can we be a distributor but utilize technology to connect small businesses with other small businesses without a giant business in between causing those chokeholds, which is what is happening. So a year later, March 22nd, our platform went live. Like I said, it's a two-sided marketplace. We connect wineries, breweries, distilleries with restaurants, bars, and retailers so that they can do business directly, but within the three-tier system. So I act as a wholesaler, I pay the taxes, I do all the things that a distributor does, but I allow these two to communicate and transact together.
Awesome. Chris, you have a similar platform, but there are some subtle nuances that distinguish you from what Cheryl's doing. Maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, so we focus truly on just technology and marketing side of things, and we understand, in the marketplace, there needs to be boots on the ground, and Rob and I have touched on this before, and people sell people. It's not the product that's going to sell people, and we understand that. So we wanted to create a gateway and kind of, a marketing side of things for these breweries to actually set up their own storefronts where they're allowed for self-distribution, and then we have partnerships with importer distributors across the country. We're rolling out slow and really try to build a very solid infrastructure so that we can really stay true to what we believe in and really supporting the brands as much as we can. So in the marketplace, we actually have people that go out, educate retailers on our platform, educate the retailer about the different brands that we work with. We call them a opportunist, and what they do is they look for different opportunities for the breweries and find the best fit. So we really offer a customized solution for the breweries allowing them to grow at their own pace, not hold them to, you have to have X amount of SKUs and this needs to be our production requirements. We just really focus on the brewery itself and align ourselves with them so that we can grow with, help them grow their brands in the marketplaces they want to grow and just cater to their needs.
Yeah. Rob, you're probably the most traditional up here, but you are coming at it from the brewery side of things, having self-distributed your own brand for a few years, the Night Shift brand. Can you talk to me about your sort of motivation to want to get into a more robust wholesale business and actually distribute for others?
Sure. Yeah, Night Shift Brewing was started back in 2012, and we firmly believe that self-distribution was our best access to the market. It allowed us to control where our product went. It allowed us to build direct relationships with accounts. And so after doing that for about 5 years, we decided that we had built up the infrastructure and we were looking to expand that into its own entity. So back in October 2016, we kind of split it off into its own business. Massachusetts, we're fortunate enough to be able to hold 2 tiers of the license. So we have a wholesaler's license as well as a farmer brewer's license. And we're really looking to get the small brewers that don't have a lot of leverage with a bigger wholesale to get their beer to market and provide a little bit more access points. I like that analogy of the hourglass. We're trying to make that funnel a little bit bigger. There's a lot of great beer out there that's just not hitting the store shelves because they don't know how to get it there. And so we're trying to facilitate that.
Yeah. So at your guys' cores, you're actively investing in the middle tier and trying to figure out a new approach. I guess I'd like to hear from all of you. What's broken about the system right now, and what are you guys doing to fix it?
Sure. My feelings are that there's just not access. There's not enough access. You have to, in order to get a distributor, you have to compete with all the other brands out there, all the other price points, all the other products. And if you're lucky, there used 7,000 distributors 20 years ago, and there's 700 now, while the number of brands has just proliferated. So how do you get access, and how can that happen easily? And that was one of the big ideas with LibDib, is that we provide, anyone can have access. So we are kind of the distributor that will not pick or choose a brand to sell. I don't sell the brands. The producers are out there selling their own brands. I'm just providing that 3-tier access that they need in the marketplace.
Okay. And one of the big, I think, common threads between all 3 of your businesses is this issue of franchise laws. Mm-hmm. And you guys have all sort of individually told me, or collectively told me when we spoke last month, that you do not want to enforce franchise laws, and if a brand wants to leave, they can leave. So why is that an important issue for you guys? And I'm going to kick this one to Rob, because you're really close to it in Massachusetts.
Sure.
You're also the head of the guild in Massachusetts, the Brewers Guild, and this is a contentious issue there. So maybe help us better understand sort of all of the arguments around why franchise laws need to be reformed and why you are actively challenging them.
Yeah, it's definitely, a tricky issue. I can see both sides of the table. I'm the president of the Mass Brewers Guild, so I've been working to try to change that. And it's not super easy. And I think, one of our principles of our distributorship is that we're a distributorship by a brewer for a brewer. And I think that comes down to trying to level the playing field and give everyone an equal seat at the table and not have someone have one advantage over another one. At the end of the day, it kind of drives me nuts that we've been fighting in Massachusetts now for about 9 years to change this franchise law. And at the end of the day, we're all on the same team. We're all here to sell more beer. And I think we're distracting ourselves by this kind of infighting. And all at the same time, we're losing market share to wine and spirits. I think it's very distracting. And I think, for our perspective, we're going to do the best possible job possible. And if we're not succeeding in that, or we change our vision, or the brewery changes their vision, let's part ways amicably and move on. There's room for other people to take a brand and usher it a little further along than we could have.
And for Chris and Cheryl, you guys are essentially technology companies, for better or worse. Does that make it easier for you guys to, sort of fly in the face of franchise laws, or, are there some difficulties there that you think you might encounter down the road?
I mean, because we meet with each of our brewery partners before we even take them on. So we want to make sure everybody's on the same page. We have the same core values. We understand their growth strategies, and we want to make sure we can actually accommodate it. So if they're actually, looking for us to grow them within the marketplace and they're just going to jump ship onto a big distributor, I have zero interest in partnering with them, because what's the point if I'm going to invest my time and money, my people? It makes no sense. So I like to be on the same page before we even do that. But I've talked to Cheryl and talked to Rob about we mitigate risk, and it's just business. If somebody's going to jump ship, they're going to jump ship. But if you don't do them wrong, they're never going to leave you. And with the breweries we work with, they make 5 to 10% more to their bottom line. So they're making more money. They're selling more beer. They have flexibility. There's, I just don't see the reason for them to leave. But if it happens, that's totally cool. I don't mind.
Now, Chris, you don't actually have a wholesaler's permit, correct?
No, but we have multiple partnerships. So California, we have one distributor importer. Arizona, we're opening Colorado, looking into Florida, Washington, and Oregon. And I'm trying to do slow, controlled growth. The demand is just insane. We have breweries that reach out every day, all day, trying to figure out how we can work together. We started on direct-to-consumer side. There's a lot of restrictions and red tape based around that. Wine has, a little bit more flexibility because of the Free the Grapes Act, and I think beer is not as well organized just yet. It's coming soon, but that was the side we wanted to have more refined, and then gain a better understanding as to how we could best accommodate the breweries and their growth plans, and make sure that we're really staying true to what we believe in and allowing them to grow at their own pace and take them where they want to go. And we believe in product freshness, refrigerated shipments door to door, everything, and we have those relationships for them. It's just, totally forgot your question. Started ranting.
Well, I got plenty of others. So, okay. I'm curious about the partnerships that you're forming. Are these with wholesalers, beer wholesalers, and what's their motivation then to essentially extend their permit to you?
My wholesalers we partner with, they share the vision. They're like Rob, they're like Cheryl. We don't want to hold anybody franchise law. If we're going to take you on, we don't do you right, you can jump ship. But the motivation behind that is to help beer, help craft breweries grow. And they really share that passion and the core values. And the other thing is they're making money. They make money off of warehousing and transportation, and they are paying all the excise taxes. We're dotting all our I's, crossing all our T's. So on that side, that's the motivation. They're able to kind of expand that side of things because, in my perspective, a lot of distributors, they come in, they're order takers, they're not truly selling a product. They're transportation companies with a license. So what we're trying to do is change that. And I know people don't like hearing that, but it's my thoughts.
Great. We appreciate the honesty. Cheryl, you're a little bit different. You guys actually do have a wholesaler's permit, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And you are essentially just acting as a technology layer in between the retailer and the supplier. So how scalable is it for you, across the country? I know you have some markets that you're identifying. Sure. And why did you decide to go that route to actually go out and acquire the wholesale permits?
Well, there was a couple of reasons. So when we initially started out, and I was talking to Chris about this earlier, I wanted to be both self-distribution and distributor. I thought that would be really cool of how can you use technology where it's kind of just unseen to the retailer, and then you just do all kind of the payments and all that kind of stuff in the back end. You can't do that. Like it's pretty much illegal because of different rules and all that kind of stuff. So we chose to be a distributor, and I wanted the experience to be where the retailer goes onto my platform, can purchase any amount of different wines, beers, or spirits, pay one check, get one invoice, have that distributor experience, but have access to really small craft products from all over, eventually, the world. By giving people access to these markets, they can, have the distributor experience, but yet the fulfillment is different. And that's kind of how that's how we are a different kind of company. They are in charge of fulfilling themselves, and whether that's FedEx or a third-party logistics company or however it works with the compliance laws. But I charge half the margin, and you said something about franchise laws earlier and why I wouldn't adhere to them is that, like I said, I have no trucks, I have no warehouses, I have no inventory. I also have no salespeople. I have platform salespeople who are teaching people how to use the platform and getting buyers on the platform. However, I don't go out and sell your products, and I never would claim to do that. Ultimately, the best salespeople, and what I like to call my crowdsourced salespeople, are the people who make the product. And those people are out there. If you're going to hustle, if you're going to have a successful product, no matter what distribution strategy you have, you're going to be out there hustling. That's just the way it is.
So is the thinking then, by taking half the margin, to allow those companies to reinvest that in their own salespeople? They're also going to, I assume, have some upfront or some greater upfront cost just for delivery and logistics.
Absolutely. Well, I kind of look at sales as a sunk cost, because you have to do that no matter if you have any kind of trade sales, whether you're with a distributor, whether you're doing it self-distribution through, you really have to be out there working the market. That's, like you said that earlier, people buy from people. You need to be out there. And some people will go to a traditional wholesaler and sell them 2 pallets and walk away and say, I'm done. And guess what? In 2 years later, you'll be taking that back. They're not brand builders anymore. So by my company, people can go on there and they put their products on there, and you're ultimately responsible for being out there and getting your accounts. We have a lot of tools. Our platform is a distributor in itself, that we have some cool tools that will help you sell. But for the most part, it's, that's a given. But the 15% difference is for fulfillment.
Yeah. Rob, you're the most familiar up here on this panel of sort of the traditional route to market through the middle tier, having or doing it for other brands and having done it in other states, with independent but still more traditional wholesalers. Is there anything that concerns you or kind of scares you about what Chris and Cheryl are doing?
No, I mean, I think it's exciting, and there needs to be more innovation. We've had so much innovation in the craft space, but really nothing in the middle tier. It's kind of the same as it was post-prohibition. And as we were saying earlier, the number of options are less and less every month as more consolidation happens in that middle tier. I always tell people, don't start another freaking brewery, start a distribution company or something along these lines. Create the platform. Because like I was saying earlier, there's a lot of good beer that just is not getting their voices heard, and it's kind of a shame. And I think that also speaks to helping grow the pie, getting things that people want and the brands and the styles that may not be as popular or may not be carrying the weight of a current distribution company.
Yeah, well, I mean, it does take a significant amount of capital to start a distribution business. Those tap handles aren't cheap, right? Especially in Massachusetts. But in your experience, having worked with some of the smaller independent distributors, what do you like about what they're offering versus what a larger, more established, family-run, multi-generation operation is bringing to the table?
Yeah, I think the kind of indie distributor who doesn't have a blue, gold, yellow, red attachment to them really have a different mindset. I think inherently craft beer is a little bit of a different product than a Bud Light is. It has a different shelf life. It has a different kind of need to sell, and it's slightly more challenging. And I think it does involve a little bit more hand-to-hand personal relationship with the accounts to really understand the story. And we talked about that earlier, how important that is to really translate that into more sales. And I think they're kind of two different businesses. And then I also think combined with the size of some of these older distributor companies, the book is just absurdly big. I think Union here in New York, they represent 800 breweries. How can you sell 800 breweries beers? And I think our approach for us is to look for a much smaller book and look for 25 to 30 brands, be really selective with who we work with, pick based on quality, and that's it, and not look to be a brand collector in any sort of
Have you done much work looking into how many of these operations actually exist now throughout the U.S.?
Yeah, so as working in a nonprofit for the States Guild, I have this idea that we could form an independent wholesalers network, which is breweries that aren't tied to national conglomerate or distributor companies that aren't tied to these nationals. And right now, I think there's about 20. Some of them are brewery-owned ones, from Stone to Maui, Harpoon, Dan Canary. He was one of the early ones that we looked to kind of model ourselves after. As well as here in New York City, there's Serene, and Maine, there's a Vacation Land distributors. These are all kind of small upstart distributors that are very traditional in the basic sense, but have that slightly different mindset where they're more craft-centric and don't have that same, I don't know, baggage is the right word, but old school mentality. More of the guys who play by the rules as well, which I think is important.
Yeah. One of the advantages, and they have a lot of advantages for sure in the marketplace right now, but one of the advantages that those established wholesalers have is they have their account universes already set and built, and it's there. And for Chris and for Cheryl, for your guys' organizations, I mean, that's something that you have to build. You have to go out and not only figure out who the right accounts are to sell these products to, you have to educate them on this new service that you're offering, and you have to, in a way, kind of generate leads. So how are you guys generating that? And I guess how difficult is it to convince these retailers to kind of get on board with what you're doing with the digital layer of in between the supplier and them?
Sure. I think it really depends on the buyer or the particular account that you're talking to. I mean, there are similar frustrations with wholesale on the small independent retailer and account level too. But ultimately, I kind of have a two-folded strategy. Number one, I do have my own people out there. It's kind of like how OpenTable had to go into restaurants and teach them how to do a new way of doing reservations. I have people out there, showing the platform and teaching them what it's all about and giving them kind of our pitch on why it's good for them to buy things through our platform, which ultimately is you can have less commoditized products and make more money selling them. So when you tell people, plus I have no minimums and a couple of other kind of features that people are really interested in. And then secondly, I train my makers on how to, which are, breweries, distilleries, wineries, on how to, they're out there selling their products, how to get their accounts onto our platform. So there's a lot of tools on the platform, an invitation tool, and different things that we've provided to them to get their people on.
Sure. Chris, how are you doing it?
It's a pain in the ass, man. If people are stuck in the old ways, they want face-to-face interaction, and that's something we've really noticed. And we took that and we want to focus heavily on the digital side, but we also know that the market's not truly ready for it yet. We're on that conversion process, but a lot of those buyers are very old school people. And so, it's the hand-holding and actually having our people go out into the field, teach them about it, teach them about the brands. And I don't know if I've touched on it, but, our guys are well-versed within 10 brands. They will not exceed that. Once they go over 10 brands, we bring another person in. It's so that they can tell the story, they can teach it, they can speak to each beer, they know the people personally. And with that, we educate these retailers in a way that a typical 3-tier distributor would not be able to do. And, we see a lot more success with it because we're passionate about the brands we work with. We know the people, we know their story, we know how unique they are. And, but they're very hesitant. Even some of the more progressive guys, they don't want to hop on their phone, tablet, computer to just put in an order real quick. There are some of the larger distributors in the San Diego area that have actually, Beerline is one of the platforms they're using to, enter in their orders. So they're kind of helping us pave that way, which they don't even realize it, and I'm cool with that. But it's a pain. There's definitely a challenge there.
Yeah. How, I guess, proprietary is the tech that you're bringing to the table, and how ownable is it? Is it the type of situation where say like a Wirtz beverage, right? Which I guess is now Breakthrough, operating in just about every state in the U.S. and they have a lot of resources, certainly a ton of money to throw around, a lot of weight to throw around, a lot of clout. Could they just come in and kind of build the same sort of tech that you're offering and replicate what you're doing? I mean, what makes what you're doing so unique and so different that a traditional wholesaler couldn't go out and do it as well?
Well, mine, of course, is the best out there ever, so you don't have to worry about that. But no, I mean, it's really interesting because when I first got into this, I was really, really worried about what the wholesalers were going to do and think. In fact, one of the very first calls I got after we launched was from Craig Wolf, who's the president of the Wine and Spirits Association. And I didn't want to talk to him. I was like, no, I'm not going to take the call. And then finally, when I did talk to him, and we realized, a lot of these folks, they do realize that there is a problem, but they want to protect the three-tier industry. So how can or the three-tier system? So how can there be different technologies to do that? But going back to your question, I think the people that I've talked to I had a lot of meetings with a lot of different wholesalers when I was at the WSWA convention, and the sense that I get is that they are spending so much time focusing on the distribution part of it in terms of the trucks and the warehouses and the salespeople and how to use technology to make that more efficient, that they have the sales process has not been addressed as well as it should have been. And so a lot of people have said, and the big guys, yeah, I'm sure the Southern Glaciers and those folks have those kinds of systems. But the little guys, they say, how can I license this? How can I do that? Those kinds of opportunities are there because they just don't have the time or the ability or they're not managing engineers. They're managing truck drivers and warehouse people and software and salespeople versus software engineers, which is a whole different ballgame.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it seems like there'd be some synergy there. Chris, how about for you? Or is what you are doing so different and unique that you wouldn't want to consider, any sort of partnerships in that realm or?
So, well, the first question was like, can you replicate it? Sure, you could. You could. We've been around for a year and a half, so I don't have anybody that I know of that has copied us just yet to the T. I'm sure there's people that have tried. There's a very complex payment gateway that I think most people don't really understand the complexities. I could sit there and tell them all day, but I'm beating my head against the wall and it just doesn't resonate sometimes. But they could absolutely replicate it, but I think our authenticity and the true value and care we have for the brands is something that you can't really replicate. And we have some relationships we can roll them into, and I think that's how we're going to win on the business side is just staying true to who we are and our core values, and not just looking to do gazillions of transactions and collecting a little bit of a fee. We want to actually work with these brands hand in hand and grow them together. So I think there are definitely some distributors out there who, well, I know there are. They call and shop us all the time, and I'm more than happy to tell them exactly what we're doing. Because I think if we have competition in the marketplace, it's not bad for us. It helps other brands we might not be able to access and help grow themselves. So I'm totally cool with that. But I forgot the second.
Just thinking long term, or would a company, like a LibDib or like a Beer Connect be, open to exploring some kind of partnership where you guys don't have the logistics component? I mean, you are admittedly not going after that. We have logistics. I have nationwide logistics we roll them into. So we have pre-negotiated rates and everything across the whole country. Even though we don't operate in the whole country just yet, we have those. And I've done favors for breweries we don't even work for because I believe in that refrigerated supply chain and care for the product. And I want the product to go from the way the brewer intended it to be all the way to when the consumer's enjoying it, just like they would right out of the tap room. I think that's one of the most important things. So these third-party logistics companies would they make a single drop, and then how does it get to the retailers?
So it depends on how we're structuring things and the state. So some states you have to have the come to rest laws, which are complete. I don't get it. So, with that, it can be a direct shipment, or let's say, going into Arizona, what we do is it gets dropped at our distributor importer's warehouse. It's always refrigerated there. Then from there, they do what's called the milk run drops, dropping to each of the retailers, or like on the smaller scale, because not every craft beer bar is going to order a pallet of your beer. So we got to make sure we can accommodate that and roll them into those relationships. So it really depends on where it's going and who the retailer is, and from there we can accommodate anything.
So you are already working on those partnerships then?
Yeah, we got them. So yeah.
Interesting. Well, I wanted to spend some time talking about e-commerce as well. I kind of am curious where that piece of the business fits into this conversation, and wonder if you guys have any thoughts about kind of the future of e-commerce and just the digital space in general as it relates to selling beer. And we've seen Amazon get more interested in delivering alcohol, and there are certainly plenty of platforms like Drizzly that are also similar to you guys, that technology layer between retailers and consumers. Where do you see sort of the e-commerce world for beer developing and going in the future? And I'll start with Cheryl.
Well, I think there's two sides to it. On the B2B side, which is what we're involved in, I think it's just going to continue to grow. I think it's just like, I think you were exactly right. It's in its infancy, but as soon as buyers recognize how easy it is to obtain information and reorder and do all the things that can kind of cause some time issues when they're dealing with traditional distribution or dealing with a sales rep coming in all the time, I think that's going to just take off over time. On the B2C side, on the B2C side, it seems like it's starting to be a crowded space when it comes to like kind of the delivery. But as someone who just recently tried it, I at first when I was like, oh, what is this like 2-hour delivery of alcohol? Like, who actually needs it? And that was when I was going to our winery every day and basically taking a case home every weekend. But now I was all of a sudden out of wine and I needed some beer for the weekend, and I ordered it. And I thought, this is kind of cool. It shows up in my house in an hour. That's it was cool. I think it's, like I said, it's a crowded space, but I do think that you have this, instant gratification. That's what this, the generation now is. That's what we want and expect from almost everything that we do, whether it comes to grocery delivery or food delivery, and why not alcohol delivery. And so I definitely think it's here to stay. Now, whether Amazon takes it over, that's the question. But the services that they have out there are pretty cool, and the selection too. It's not just there's a lot of really cool stuff. Yeah,
Chris. Future of e-commerce, where do you see it going?
Well, I think up and coming generations, it's the push button. We need it now. We need it, at our fingertips. And so that's what we first started with, was direct to consumer. And, when you look at the numbers for, Minibar, Drizzly, all those guys, they have like a 1.4% usage rate on an annual basis. So with us, our first year we had recurring orders of 4 times a year, average order size of $60. So there's obviously a demand there, but it's for those more exclusive products. It's not, I don't need a handle of Fireball, a 6-pack of Rob's beer and something else. Like that's not that consumer. So we're very different on that side of things. We like to cater towards the beer nerd who they don't have distribution in their area, but I think there's a huge demand for that in itself. Like Cheryl was saying, I think it is becoming impacted, and I know there's larger companies that are investing in that side of things. So, they're going to squash all the competition. That's just the way it goes. I see there is a value there, and it's just, we want to stay true to who we are and focus specifically on just the beer. I don't want to touch anything else. Like, if you want good, hard to find beer, that's what we want to bring you. Other than that, you're going to have to go to Drizzly or Minibar or God knows what.
Rob, you're a brewer and a distributor. Do you view Amazon as a threat or an ally?
I don't think so at this point. I think with the craft beer, it's a little bit different than buying diapers or something on Amazon. I have a newborn, so that's on my mind. I think it's like, the craft beer consumer is a little promiscuous. They want to look and search the shelf set. They want to talk to the beer buyer, see what's hot, what's new. They want to check freshness dates. And I think that's a little bit more of a tactile thing than some of the other things that are now moving to e-commerce. Beer is also heavy and cumbersome to deliver, and I don't know how you can make $40 drops make sense from a distribution standpoint, unless they're buying a lawnmower and some diapers. But I think there's always room for innovation. There's always room for new ideas, and if that's what gets beer into consumers' hands, that would be great. I know as a brewery, we would have loved the ability to ship direct to consumers, to pre-sale batches of beer online. I think the brewery's kind of trying to do that recently with some hoppy stuff. I think that's amazing. If I could brew and know that everything's already pre-sold, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Well, I did want to take some time to get to some audience questions as well, and there's a few of them. So just kind of go down the line here. And I'll start with a question for Rob. Why did you decide to self-distribute on day one versus going with a distributor? What made you hold on to signing with a distributor over the 5 years leading up to starting your separate distribution arm?
We were new. We were home brewers. We had no industry experience when we started. We kind of wanted to learn from the entire spectrum of the beer business, and we also didn't have a great plan. And we kind of found ourselves over the last 5.5 years of where we wanted to go and what we wanted to do. And it just felt too fragile to commit to ourselves for life to a distributor when we didn't really know who we are and where we're going. I mean, our first year of business, we sold 200 barrels of beer in cork and cage 750s. Now we don't do any of that, and we're going to sell about 20,000 barrels of beer, all in cans. So we're a very different company than we were. So I'm really grateful that we didn't. There are some great, local options. I'm friends with the Mass Bev Alliance guys back there, and nothing bad about them to say, but I think we wanted to maintain that control and that personal connection to our accounts, and I think it's paid off in dividends. We're a lot bigger and have grown a lot faster than a lot of our peers that make just as good beer that are kind of start at the same time. And part of that is because we have full mind share of our own distribution.
Yeah. Another question that came in was, this question about why there aren't more traditional wholesalers opening up while there are so many new brands being created. And Rob, I think you can probably speak to that. Why aren't there more, independent distribution options being explored right now? The easy answer is it's a not sexy business. It's really freaking tough. We started delivering beer out of the back of my Subaru Outback, which I still drive today. It's dented, it's ripped. My car permanently smells like stale beer, but it's a grind. And brewers always like to bitch about the 30% margin. It's not that much money at the end of the day once you pay for all your trucks, your sales team, your refrigeration, things like that. So you definitely need a good amount of capital, and it's not glamorous. I think there are some people that are trying to make it a little bit more exciting. But I think Night Shift, we have $1 million in account receivables right now. That's a lot of cash to float for a small business like ours, and that makes it also challenging. Yeah. Another question for you folks on the technology side. Who's out in the market servicing the accounts? If maybe for Chris it's the opportunist, but who's actually out there kind of rolling up their sleeves and getting their hands dirty, or is that just something you don't worry about at all?
My model is that the brewers are. So they're out there working with the accounts, showing them their products. Like I said, I have salespeople, but they're more platform salespeople. So ultimately, it's the people who make the products themselves.
Because the wholesalers do more than just deliver beer and sell beer or build brands. They're in these accounts, servicing these accounts, cleaning lines, doing all sorts of things that go unnoticed and are not often discussed. But Is that just something that you figure will kind of work itself out, or?
We've recommended different companies that can help with that they can, hire to do those types of things. But for the most part, it hasn't been an issue at this point.
Interesting. Chris, how about for you?
We're there doing it. So, our opportunities are out there. If it's a big box retailer, they got to come in, throw the load, merchandising, everything. They're there, and they're working with them hand in hand. If, the conversation of line cleaning comes up, we can accommodate. I typically prefer to work with places that are going to be doing it on their own, because those are the places I feel are the best fits for our brand, because they actually care about what they're serving. So if you go on and you apply as a retailer to our platform, the first question is, do you clean your lines between cakes? If you don't, we're not giving you access. It's plain and simple. So, we're very concerned about quality and quality control. But we're always in the market. We're helping. We're doing everything we can to help the breweries, because I think when you're robbing Peter to pay Paul and you're wearing 10 different hats, you need a service and people to come in and actually provide you, all the other stuff that you might not know how to do yourself, or you don't want to do. You don't have the experience. So that's kind of where we like to supplement the breweries and, help them.
Yeah.
That way.
Do you guys view yourselves in some ways, and this is for all three of you, as incubators? We talked about the franchise law piece, and you guys aren't really enforcing them, but at some point, you've spent a lot of time and money, building brands, or let's assume that you've spent a lot of time and money helping these brands get to scale. If they then want to go somewhere else or work with another wholesaler, you're totally fine, letting them go, totally free and clear, not asking for, any sort of compensation in return for giving them back their distribution rights. And I guess that just makes you a brand incubator, but you're leaving money on the table at that point, aren't you?
Well, ultimately, I haven't spent the time out there building the brand. They have. So it would really not be good business for me to say, hey, I'm going to keep you, since they're the ones who, with the way my model works, they're the ones who have spent all the time and effort out there building the brand. So.
But it's still margins that you're losing.
It's still margins, but my model is that I, take a small amount of money on lots. It's different, absolutely different than yours. I take a small amount of money on lots of transactions and just enable access.
Yep.
I mean, I'll go back to, if we don't do anybody wrong, they're not going to go anywhere, because we can help them grow throughout the whole state, across state lines. So, it's just a part of business. If we're not treating them right, I'll reflect to a marriage. If you're married and you're not happy with the person, freaking leave them. Why are you guys sticking through it? I don't get it. So
there are divorce attorneys. And
and that's just that. But I don't even want, when we don't have to use an attorney and waste all that money, just go on your way and do your thing.
Well, who keeps the dog and who keeps the house?
I'd say I keep the dog, but you can have the house.
Rob, how about for you? I mean, you're getting some good brands to pay attention to you guys, and you're selling some brands that have some potential. Yep. At some point, if one of those brands wants to leave and move over to Mass Bev Alliance or move over to Atlantic, what do you say to them?
I mean, I think that would be a big bummer, but something along the way went really wrong, and that we probably deserve to part ways. I mean, we just asked for 90 days notice. But to me, it's no different than if Whole Foods wants to stop buying Night Shift beer tomorrow. That's a chunk of our business. That would be a shame. But as long as we do, we uphold the quality and the quantity that they want, and we're moving the product, I don't foresee that happening anytime soon. Maybe it's a little idealistic or naive utopian thinking, but I think there's room for us to have a positive relationship and grow together.
Yeah. All right. Well, I will give each of you, say 10 or 15 seconds to explain your vision of the future of the middle tier, and I'll start with Rob. In 10 years, the middle tier will look like what?
I think in 10 years, if the middle tier can be as revitalized as the craft brewers tier, that would be an amazing thing. Fresh ideas, reinventing old ideas and new approaches to getting beer into more people's hands.
Chris?
I'd say, I'd piggyback off of Rob, be progressive. And I think that utilizing technology and embracing it versus trying to combat it, it's there to help you. And so hopefully more people are going to be using that, and brands are able to grow at their own pace and really create equality off the whole side of distribution. No more pay to play, and people just kind of, the good beer will speak, and that's what's going to sell.
Cheryl?
Yeah, I agree. I think that technology is going to help replace the traditional distributors that are, not replace, but enhance, and they will be more of a delivery mechanism, whereas technology helps with the sales strategies.
Interesting. Well, some fascinating stuff. Will be interesting to watch how it all unfolds. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Cheers. Thank you.
Buddy.
Thanks, Chris. Guys.